Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever and wherever you're watching this video. My name is Azizsyah Putra and you can check the detail of my identity in the video title and description below. To get straight to the point, today I would like to retell the story entitled The Cutty Sark and the Silent Village. And let's dive straight into the first story, The Cutty Sark. The story takes us back in the time, focusing on the famous and majestic tea clipper ship and the incredible journey it made across the ocean. And here is the how story goes. The story is about one of the famous sailing ships of the 19th century, a ship called the Cutty Sark. And the story revolves around an extraordinary race across the ocean and the dramatic series of events that unfolding during it. The main characters in the story are the Cutty Sark herself and her great rival, the Thermopyle. Both of them is the powerful and fast-sailing ship, and the captain of the Cutty Sark also plays an important role in the decision made during the race. The story takes place on the open sea, beginning in Shanghai, China, and ending in England during the year 1872. At the beginning of the story, we are introduced to the Cutty Sark as one of the greatest sailing ships ever built. Even today, and she can still be standing on the dry land at Greenwich, England, where she is visited by 1,000 people every year as a reminder of the golden age of sail before steam power ship replaced them. Sailing vessels like the Cutty Sark were used to carry tea from China and wool from Australia across long ocean routes. And one day, specifically on the June 80, 1872, both of the Cutty Sark and the Thermopyle set out from Shanghai and what would become a legendary race to England. The race lasted exactly 4 months. It was considered the last great race of its kind, making the end of an era of elite sailing ship and the beginning of a new age dominated by the steam power. Then, as the race began to develop, the first ship to reach Java was the Thermopyle, not the Cutty Sark. But, however, on the Indian Ocean, the Cutty Sark took the lead. It seemed almost certain that she would be the first ship to arrive home in England. Everything was going in her favor. After the disaster struck in August, the Cutty Sark was hit by a very heavy storm. The storm was so powerful that it tore away her rudder completely. Without a rudder, the ship rolled from side to side and it became impossible to steer her in any direction. Suddenly, the crew had no choice but to act quickly and creatively. They built a temporary rudder on board using spare planks, which was fitted with great difficulty. And the problem was that the makeshift rudder was fragile, and the captain knew that if she moved too fast, the temporary rudder would be torn away again, just like the original rudder. And so the Cutty Sark had to slow down significantly, and as a result, she lost her lead. After crossing the equator, the captain made the difficult decision to call at a port so that a proper new rudder could be fit. By that time, however, the Thermopyle was already more than 500 miles ahead. Even though the new rudder was fitted at the tremendous speed, the gap was simply too large to recover. In the end, the Cutty Sark arrived in England 1 week after the Thermopyle, and she had lost the race. But finally, the story concludes, but not on a note of defeat. The story reminds us that arriving 1 week late, after losing a rudder, surviving a violent storm, building a temporary replacement at the sea, and stopping for repairs was itself a remarkable achievement. And there is no doubt, as the author states, that had she not lost her rudder, the Cutty Sark would have won the race easily. And from this story, I think we can learn that misfortune does not always reflect the true ability. And the moral value of this story is that we should never give up in the face of difficulty, and we should not judge success or failure based on the result alone. And because sometimes circumstances are beyond our control. And that is the end of the first story. And now moving on from the vast and open ocean of the Cutty Sark, and our second story takes us to completely different place, a quiet, mysterious, and tense setting. Let's get into the second story entitled The Silent Village. The story is about a man and his wife who are traveling through the Balkans and unexpectedly find themselves in the deeply unsettling village. The main characters are the narrator, who tells the story from his own perspective, his wife, a boatman they encounter along the way, and the mysterious villager they meet. The story takes place on a remote mountain village in the Balkans, reached only by crossing dense forests and deeply stream. The atmosphere of the story is eerie, tense, and quietly threatening throughout. At the beginning of the story, the narrator warned us that the remote villages are not always welcoming. Because what? Because the people cut off from the outside world can sometimes be hostile to the traveler. And he and his wife had been visiting old carts in a small Balkan town known for its beautiful frescoes. On their last day, the town became too crowded, and so they decided to explore the countryside instead. And then they walked through fields and a dense wood until they reached a deep stream with no way to cross. And after that, the wife spotted a boat with a boatman asleep inside, and they woke him up and took reluctant, and he agreed to ferry them to the across. And the path led them to a tiny village perched on the steep mountainside, built entirely of grey mud bricks and seemingly deserted. And suddenly, as the day sat down for a picnic near a fence, the narrator looked up and saw they were completely surrounded by children in rags, and staring them in total silence. And when they walked down the main street, men stood outside, glaring. An old woman peered from doorways, and yet not a single sound could be heard. And the silence itself was the most frightening thing of all. In the end, the couple needed no further warning. They understood, without a word being spoken, that they were deeply unwelcome, and finally they turned back and quickened their pace down to the main street, and moving rapidly toward the stream. And the story ends with them hurrying up through the countryside, hoping desperately that the boatman was still waiting to take them back, and leaving the silent village and all its unspoken hostility far behind them. And from the story, we can learn that not every place is open to outsiders, and we should always be aware of the signal around us. The moral story and the moral value of the story, I think, is that curiosity must be balanced with respect also, and not all boundaries are visible. And knowing when to step back is form of wisdom. And we can say that the story also teaches us that some lines become clearer when you choose not to cross them. But because what? Because it's a reminder that just because an opportunity or place exists, it doesn't mean we belong there. Much like how not all clothes will suit you, no matter how beautiful they look. Sometimes recognizing where we are not welcome and choosing to walk away is the wisest decision we can make. That's all from me. Thank you for your attention. I hope my story provides you with a good insight, or at the very least, we are entertaining to listen to. Thank you once again, and have a great day. See you later. Bye bye.